Nonsense, The Center, with your host, DC Radical One.
Greetings, Black family, and welcome to On the Wake Up Radio. I am your host, DC Radical One, and you have entered the center. Shout out to our, excuse me, wonderful producer, Cindy Ashby. You can check us out on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and iHeartRadio at On the Wake Up Radio. Thank you, brother. So, really, I'm only back on being completely honest because of brother, you got ripped off. So if you enjoy the show, thank brother you got ripped off. He's the only reason I'm back. Um, I've been sick for like the last almost 2 weeks. I've been sick more in the last 2 weeks than I've been sick in the last 5 years. So it's one of those things. And apparently y'all can hear it because brother, you got ripped off, made a comment. So we're only going to be on about, and I swear I was feeling much better when I scheduled this show. I sounded better too. I tested it out. It's going to be a 90-minute show, max. But I had some things on my mind. Some things occurred recently. It's the reason why I have this art up. The art is the theme of the show. And so I'll give y'all the story behind it. A few things happened. One, probably most important, is I went to the annual Umoja Karamu Unity Feast at Ujuma Shule School. This is the oldest African Center school in the country. If you've listened to me for a long time, you hear me mention it before. They have Umoja Karamu every year. And they also they have their own dedicated day of Kwanzaa here in Washington, D.C. I'm currently working, and I'll let you all know this, and when I have confirmation, which hopefully I get it by tomorrow, or else it's gonna make it rough. And I haven't even greeted everybody. First of all, let me greet everybody before I get started. Straight Black Pride, the sister Nina, BB4 Straight Black Pride, the brother Elijah. I hope that your book launching went well, brother. Peace to Lord Vale. Of course, BB4 brother, you got ripped off. And greetings to brother Lee Clinton. That's everybody's in the chat so far. It's kind of weird, like the chat is moving slow. People popping in slow. I don't know what's going on with that. So I went to Umoja Karamu, Baba Zulu, El Senzakulu Zulu, who founded the oldest continuously running African Center school in the country here in Washington, D.C. in 1968. That was before I made another physical manifestation onto the planet. I say another because I have no doubt that I've been here before. And I'll probably come back again because it's needed. So, I always enjoy going to Baba Zulu's events, seeing the children that Watoto perform. They do plays. They do African drumming and dancing. And they carry on Baba Zulu's motto. And my goal is to have an interview with him, but his motto is, man, I'm about to mess it up. I'm about to mess it up. Education with, I believe it's education with African culture. Something like that. I want to do an interview with him next year. So we currently making plans for me to do the annual Dr. Khaled Dr. Chancellor Williams lectures from his facility. So when those plans are finalized, I'll let you all know. The lecture will be changed up a little this year, considering some of the events that have taken place on the African continent. Some of our enemies have moved up in order of importance over others, so they'll get higher up on the list. And so those things happen. And there's something very kind of funny happen. My brother had sent me a video. Y'all gotta excuse me for a minute. He sent me a video of an old performance by Prince. And I watched it. It was from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I believe it's when he was inducted. And so in this video, pretty much one of his greatest recorded guitar solos. And I had watched it before, but for some reason I watched it again. And when I watched it, I really kind of studied it, and I was like, "Yo, this was phenomenal." So I wanted to see, was I tripping? So I watched other people's reaction, including musicians. And the reason I did that is because I don't know if I ever told y'all this publicly. Y'all know I wanted to be a musician, but I did have a guitar. I was learning the guitar. I won't get into what happened with that story. I'll save that for another day. But yeah, I have dabbled in playing 3 instruments. Technically 4, but yeah, 3. When I was a teenager. So, I've always had a love for music. Music was my first love, even before knowledge. But anyway, baby for Oda to Sister Tia. So anyway, I watched that, and I watched people's reaction, and it was funny because I was trying to remember how long Prince has been deceased. It's been 6-7 years, so not that long. And I was surprised because people were like, "Oh man, I didn't know Prince played guitar," and I'm like, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, maybe it's because I'm old, but literally what I think of when I think of him, even though he played like 20 something instruments or whatever, is him playing guitar. Whether it's, seeing the movie Purple Rain or whatever, right? And so when I thought about it, I was like, oh, and one more thing happened. But when I thought about it, I was like, so if somebody that's been gone for 7 years can be a part of who they are, an essential part of who they are, essential part of their skill set can be forgotten in 7 years, how much of our culture, history, and traditions can be lost? Sister said he played 20 is somewhere between 25 and 30 instruments. Now, I've seen him in concert, actually like 2 or 3 times. And I've seen him play about 6 instruments on stage. So that's what I've seen. That's what I've visually seen myself. Is something to see somebody play and have a whole band of 15 people on stage and they walking around playing everybody's instruments for them. It's crazy. But so I thought about that and I was like, yeah, that's crazy. Like, how do people not remember that? But he wasn't at the peak of his, one, he's an eccentric dude, but he wasn't at the peak of his popularity when he transitioned. So then another thing happened. The next thing, well, not the next thing, I started paying attention to this hip hop thing. I don't know if y'all, I've been paying attention to like the 50th anniversary of hip hop. So, you know, I'm like, okay, 5 decades. And there's this back and forth discussion about who started hip hop and all this and that, right? And I'm gonna do a separate. I'm gonna do a separate video on what I think and the big overarching part that everybody's missing, and how it's a sign about weakness. Because there's two things that are missing in that discussion. But so there's always been the Cool Herc thing, and the Bronx and all that, and then excuse me, some people came out and like, well, no, there's this other DJ that was before him, and this and that, and people want to argue, and then some people trying to say that Jamaicans started hip hop and this and this and that. Now, just basically briefly, first of all, you have to understand that when you talk about hip hop, right, the roots of what makes up hip hop go back further than what is acknowledged as the subculture. It's not a culture, it's a subculture of hip hop. So the drum, graffiti, breakdancing, all of these things, spoken word or rapping, excuse me, all these things go back not only in African, quote unquote, American culture, but can be traced directly back to Africa. But nobody talks about that part. They'd rather argue about whether Jamaican, this and that. And then the last thing with that is, who owns it now? The Hat owns it. The Hat uses it to make money. The Hat uses it to brainwash our people. The Hat uses it as a weapon of war, as a weapon of propaganda against our people. So while Negroes are arguing amongst themselves about who started this and DJ this one and that one and so forth and so on, and the Bronx and Bronxdale and this and that and blah, 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 the Hat makes all the money. The Hat controls the so-called culture. The Hat is the reason why people like Poor Righteous Teachers didn't go double platinum, but people like Sexy Red and these people, your children know every word they say. And Little Nas X and all these other people, your children know every word they say. But nobody don't want to talk about that. They rather argue amongst themselves. So what's my original point? My original point is, it's the reason why I have this art here, up here. My original point is, in 50 years, in 40 years, in 30 years, history, tradition, and culture can be lost to time to the point that people who are still alive are arguing with other people who are still alive about what happened when all of them are still alive and allegedly were all there, right? That's the thing about the hip hop thing. A lot of the people still alive. And they're arguing amongst each other about this and that. And it just goes to show that the history and traditions of things can be lost, even in one lifetime. You see what I'm saying? And that one of the things that happen amongst Black people is we love to argue the minutia of stuff so we can miss the point. I think it's done subconsciously. I think it's done on purpose. We want to argue about the smallest details of stuff so we can miss the real reality of stuff, right? That's why the whole hip hop thing, that when I look at it, I see the argument about the minutia so we can miss the reality. What state is this, what they call the culture of hip hop? What state is it in now? When you talk about the four elements of hip hop, we have to attribute the four elements of hip hop have been attributed to Bang Booty. If that's the case, do we have to throw out all of hip hop because Bang Booty is a pedophile? Let's talk about that part. We want to argue about where it came from. What do we do with Bank? There's a known pedophile that y'all consider one of the fathers of hip hop, and he's a pedophile. He hadn't come out and denied being a pedophile. People have been shot and killed over this thing. Fights have broke out. You got people defending him, but don't have no actual answers on what went down. So the whole at the root of it, or near the root, close enough. A pedophile sits at the root of the so-called culture, but y'all want to argue about who started it, but you don't want to exile the pedophile that's at the root, which is Bambaataa, who said, or Bang Booty, as I call him, that he's the one that laid out the 4 elements of hip-hop and the 4 principles of hip-hop. But we don't want to talk about that. But we want to argue about whether Jamaicans started it or whether whoever, Puerto Ricans, Haitians, whoever. But nobody, here's the bad part, nobody is arguing about whether or not the pedo is American. See, we ain't trying to throw the pedo, we ain't trying to make him Jamaican. Nobody accused him of being Jamaican or Haitian or nothing else, right? Want to claim him as being American, but we don't want to discuss his crimes against the community, right? So you got to examine the whole thing. But back to my original point, because I done went off on a tangent. These diverse, non-connected events that occurred in my life made me look and say, maintaining tradition, history, and culture is important. Because if you look at our people right now, I talk to Brother Genie a lot. And I would be like, man, our people are doing this and that and blah, blah, blah. And this was happening. This was going on in the streets. This was going on the internet, blah, blah, blah. He said, man, we don't have no identity. Baba Rudy wrote an excellent book, Identity. I need to reread it. And I probably need to read it annually. And if you get a chance, you can go to Baba Rudy's website. Whether you got ripped off because you put Baba Rudy's website, I believe it's AcubenHouse.com, and you can get that book, Identity. It's imperative if you haven't read it. It's excellent. But what I realize is those of us, now that I'm at the age I am, those of us who know, those of us who sat at the foot of the elders, those of us who indeed KW done Greek Bang Booty, those of us who were around when Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben and others, Amos Wilson, Steve Coakley, all of these greats were here. It's important, imperative to carry on and pass on the traditions to the people behind us, because as I realize now, we're the link in the chain. And sometimes I have to remind myself. That honoring Dr. Chancellor Williams at his gravesite is important because of the work he did and the lessons he gave us. And so if 5 people show up or 500 people show up, is not what's relevant. What's relevant is carrying on the tradition, is passing it on, as we see here. Priests passing it on to warriors. That's what the picture represents. The elders passing on the knowledge which is a treasure, on to the next generation. And so when I examine these things, like I said, next year on the European calendar is, because the end of this year, I ain't gonna lie, it's been rough. You know, today, literally an hour ago, found out one of my appliances just not working. Just fired it up like I normally do. Set it up, press the button for it to start, and nothing. That's my that's my last month in a nutshell, man. The voice, the not being sick for 5 years, suddenly being sick. That's my month. So more so probably than I normally do, I am definitely going to be asking y'all to make this channel grow and make it worth my while for this channel. Because my goal is, as I do this, is it to be able to, whether it's through YouTube or through donations, for it to be economically viable enough for the channel to sustain itself. There's all this little things that come with it that I spend money on to try to keep it up to date and blah blah blah. And so I just want it to get to the point where it sustains itself and it's worth my while to come on and do what I do. I have a certain amount of people that always support the lectures no matter what, no matter how much they're similar. Some of y'all support it every year, and I appreciate that. Some of y'all come into the chat and greet me every time I come on. Some of y'all watch every show. I appreciate those people because you make the job easier. Thank you, sister. You make the job easier for me and make it easier for me to continue the mission. Because I don't know if I ever told this story. What got me back into the movement, being honest, this was a time when I was really ill. This has been about 12 years ago. Maybe longer than that, 12, 13. Probably the sickest. This is actually the sickest I ever remember being. I had some type of flu or something. And for a minute, I thought I wasn't going to make it. I was like, still sick. Still can't do nothing. Still can barely get out of bed. And I was like, I don't think it's not looking too good. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you ever been in that situation you ever had, whether it's illness or some other medical emergency or something, and you get to doubting for a minute. Yeah, and over a decade ago that happened. And so I made a pledge. Made a pledge to the ancestors. I was like, hey. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but hey, if you get me back, I will go back to the mission. And if you show me the one that's doing the work, I'll support that person, and we're just gonna ride till the wheels fall off. So it's a true story. About a year later, I met Brother Jimmy. I've been riding till the wheels fall off ever since. I've been doing the work ever since. I've been studying people like Baba Rudy and going back to the older people ever since. And so it's been my purpose in life. It's made doing this work, I'm being completely honest, has made my life worth living. I'm just being completely honest. Being amongst black people who love black people, traveling to different cities. Some of you are in different cities I met, some of you are where you are from. Some of you all have come to DC, teaching our people and giving them information that they did not have, being able to build this community online, whether it's here or on Instagram, wherever, has been thank you, sister. Yeah, I definitely need some zinc. And in fact, it's so funny you said that. My next live stream, because I have a brother who I've done what's a promo for on Instagram. My next live stream, you got ripped off. Remind me, give that brother a shout out. I'm gonna give him a read for his vitamins. Black owned distributor of a black owned product. So I'm gonna give him a free read. Um, just because. And so, yeah, and that's another thing too. I will be opening up the channel to sponsorship. So if you have a product or service and you would like a read, or you have a 30-second or 1 minute commercial that you already got ready, I'll insert that into a video, or we'll insert it into the live stream. We're gonna start doing that next week. So that in itself, we can help each other out. I can help promote your black owned product. You can help fund the channel. So just let your friends know to have a black owned business. Yeah, the brother, yeah, he it's not that brother, but it is that product. So yeah, so when I was looking at this hip hop thing and just watching people and the argument, and like I said, all these things, and being able to go to first of all, let me ask, how many people have heard of Umoja Karamu, and how many people? So if you heard of it, you can just put a Y in the chat. And how many people have celebrated it in this city? Y'all let me know that. But basically, and I was trying to find my African people and European holidays, a cultural genocide book. Of course, I couldn't find it because it's just been that type of. I mean, that's just the type of month it's been. I mean, it is what it is. I have things organized to where I normally know where they are. I normally know which stack of books, where certain books based on theme should be, or based on author. And yeah, that never happened. So we're going like straight off the dome with it. But anyway, the what I call cultural high holy day was founded in 1971. So what, 52 years ago? And basically is in essence, a replacement for Thanksgiving. Something that took place that we never really acknowledged is that in the late 60s, early 70s, different black people decided that in order to make a bridge for us to step away from European holidays, they would make alternatives based on our history and our culture, right? So Moja Karamu is one for Thanksgiving. Um, I'm seeing people say that it's supposed to be the fourth Sunday, but we've always celebrated, excuse me, the day after Thanksgiving. I can see how the Sunday would be more convenient for people. Now I'm seeing a lot more churches incorporated into their service, but we've always done it the day after. And so instead of celebrating, you know, um, turkey and y'all know everything that goes with Thanksgiving, all those different things. Um, it it's a commemoration of our journey here, starting in the continent, and then looking forward to the future. So each day, each section of our history, like starting in Africa, has a different time period, a different color, and a different food. Excuse me. And so you symbolically, you you'd have a discussion about the time period, like the time in Africa before invasion, the time of the Maafa, the Great Disaster, what we know as enslavement, the time of emancipation, the time of civil rights and Black liberation, and then into the future. And then, of course, if I remember this correctly, the color, the black, the period in Africa is the color that goes with that is black, and the food is black eyed peas. And then the enslavement, of course, the color is white, obviously, and the food is just white rice. And then I believe with the emancipation, the color is red, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and I cannot remember what food we had. No, we had wine. No, well, we had grape juice. And then the color is green, and that goes with the civil rights and Black Power era. And the symbolic food is collard greens. And lastly, looking into the future, the color is gold. And what we had, now I've heard some people say they had corn, but we had cornbread. And so that's the basics of that ceremony. But the reason the ceremony is important is because as we are being more integrated and less culturally, our cultural foundation is being pulled away from us. And we're losing who we are, right? Like, for example, this was crazy. I don't know if y'all seen this. What is the guy's name? What is his name? Jonathan Majors, the actor. And this was like this is one of the craziest things I've heard. Allegedly, well, not allegedly, because I think they played a recording. But in his case, he being tried for I believe domestic violence, some type of domestic violence charge in New York. And this thing's been dragging on for a while. And his whole career is in the balance. But he was with a European female, which is problem one. That's your first mistake. So everything that happens after that is your fault. But the European female had a recording of him saying that she should act more like Coretta Scott King and somebody else. I can't remember, another Black woman. And when I saw that, I was just like, that shows how insane we are. You want distinguished racially responsible black woman behavior from a what looks to me be a 100% white female. Did anybody see that? Did somebody said that to me on Instagram, and I was like, if this wasn't in a courtroom, I wouldn't have believed it. But they said that they played, for some reason the chick kept she kept the audio and played it. I guess she was offended, which I guess she should have been offended, because he asked her to do something that she's not capable of doing. But it just goes to show how insane we get, that a Negro will go get a European female and, in essence, tell her she's not acting black enough, when you could have just got you a black woman. Like, he didn't even get this. This is how crazy this is, right? Okay, you're in LA. I guess they've been in LA. I don't know. Or New York. Maybe you met her in New York. Nonetheless, there are plenty of black women in New York, and there are plenty in LA, and even more in New York. If you don't want a whole black woman, there's so many hybrids and mixtures of black women in Los Angeles that you can't even categorize all of them. And yet, here he is asking a white woman to be more black. That shows what happens when you are disconnected from your history, your culture, and your traditions. You make insane demands. You have insane ideas. You have that. A sister messaged me and showed that to me. Commented on it, and I was like, remember what W.E.B. Du Bois was talking about with the dual consciousness of the Negro? That's literally the manifestation of that. By the way, can y'all hear me? If y'all can hear me, give me a 1 in the chat. But yeah, that Jonathan Majors thing, it just struck me as, this is how crazy we are. This is how lost we are. This is how cool. Thank you. This is how and brother, you got ripped off, didn't even bother to tell me to put on the music, but y'all might not be able to hear me if I put on the music. This is how disconnected we are from ourselves and from reality. That a Negro would bypass all the black, because to me, is just my point of view. When you date, especially you are in a relationship with a non-black person, you're black, you wouldn't, you were European female, Asian, whatever. You have made the conscious choice to bypass all black women or men, depending on if you're a man or woman, on earth. You made the conscious decision. That's how I look at it. You can't tell me there are allegedly 9-10 billion people on earth, about 2 billion Africans and African descended people, and in at least 100 countries. And you're a person of means. You have achieved some success. You have some notoriety. You can travel and go to different places if need be. And yet You just with random white woman. Hey, Sister Nina. Yeah, I know he's dating Megan Good now. I don't even know how I feel about that, but hey, it's an upgrade over where he was at. That's for sure. I mean, there's Megan Good certainly always been pleasant to look at. I give her that. I don't know much about her personality. Everybody in Hollywood is damaged, so you know what I'm saying. They all everybody in Hollywood is, you don't um you rarely exist in that place and emerge unscathed psychologically, spiritually, or whatever. And you can add the music industry to that. I'm not even gonna get into the Puffy stuff because I, I know I have to use allegedly. Everything that he's allegedly been accused of, I believe 90% of it. That's all I've known people that went to school with him at Howard. So, it's accused of being a little strange there. Just saying, you know. Um, but yeah, so that Jonathan Majors thing, it was just real interesting when I saw that. I was like, see, this is what happens. This is why being ourselves and defining that is so important. And right now, especially on the internet, the internet is a very anti-African environment. And Black people on the internet find every excuse to argue with any subset of black people that exists, whether it's Black men and Black women, whether it's Black people from America, Black people from Africa, Black people from the Caribbean and Black people in Africa, Black people in the Caribbean, Black people in America. The only people that are not involved in this madness that I see anyway is only because they don't speak the language. The people in Brazil, it's as many Black people in Brazil as it is anywhere else in the Western Hemisphere. And they not in it because they speak a different language and they probably looking at us like, hey, man, we down here fighting for our life and you fools is arguing about nonsense. They probably would look at us like we're crazy because we are. Just being completely honest. We, in reality, as Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad said, and many of us, by the way we act, we've even lost our mind. It's where we are. And we're where we are. What I realize, and it's so interesting, is that I'm looking at Europeans and they're talking about the state of America, which is in bad shape. I remember, you in DC, like the political thing kind of seeps into your blood. I remember looking at Clinton and Bush, and Bush used to do the State of the Union. The State of the Union done annually, right? I'm not tripping. Somebody help make sure that I'm right with that. And he would always say the state of our union is strong. And which was wild because he said that he had to say that 3 months or so after allowing 9/11 to happen. The state of our union is strong. Like there's a big giant hole in the skyline of New York, man. He's talking about the state of our union is strong. You know what I'm saying? Like, who are you fooling? No, it's not. Things are not going well. People were killed on American soil. And you were on the job reading books about goats to children or whatever was happening. I don't, I can't be the person to lie to our people. Like, it's kind of rough right now. He's kind of in bad shape. And I'm watching white people talk about how bad is shape things are. And I'm like, if y'all only paid attention to what was happening with black people, you could have seen this stuff coming. Maybe you could have said, hey, black people, how bad is it down there? And we'd have been like, it's pretty bad down here. You don't want to come down here, buddy. It's pretty bad. The ship has a huge hole in it and water is seeping in. You might want to send help. But, now we are where we are. The good part for black people is we have a home. We can stay here and try to save this, right? But if we stay here and try to save this, which is a plan because there are 50 million black people here. It's kind of hard to get 50 million black people to move to any place and be accepted, especially with our current behavior. Because let's be honest, many of us don't want to be around many of the 50 million black people that are here because we've lost our mind. I do not want to go to another country and take the guy who thinks like Jonathan Majors thought when he told that white woman that. What Sister need to say? Serena Williams not gonna learn. Hey, look. Again, right? Yeah, I don't want to go to another. I don't want to take Serena Williams. Serena Williams. If I go somewhere like some people had to be left behind. What the brother song? Everybody's not going to make it, right? But again, culturally connecting ourselves is imperative because now I see it only takes 1 or 2 generations. The genocultural stuff that's in us will remain, right? So singing, the dancing, the rhythm, the love of nature, some of the traditions like libation, even like some of our fashion designers have like certain patterns and stuff that they put and they don't even realize it. And I always tell people, if you look at the old ironwork, some of the things that are some of the designs that are the standard in ironworks that you'll see on gates and fences and on I forgot what they call it. What am I thinking of? But you see this stuff all the time. Some of those are Adinkra symbols that our ancestors, we were the ones doing the work because nobody ever talks about it. Black people were smelting steel thousands of years ago. The idea that they just took random uncivilized people and brought them here to work is a ridiculous concept. Once you study Adinkra, you start seeing it at all types of places. You be like, yo, I've been seeing this for years. I never knew what this was. Our ancestors were putting up the language and putting the culture into their work so that it exists through time and send a message to us. That's one of the things about when people were talking about hip hop, and I was like, and I started thinking about it. I was like, well, first of all, graffiti, that goes all the way back to ancient Kemet. Who were the people? We are literally the people who put writing on the wall. Not with a spray paint. but with engraving it to the wall and then adding color and texture, and with the lighting, it makes it look like it's moving. We did that 10,000 years ago. That's the foundation, the origin of graffiti, right? That goes way beyond America. But we don't even look at it as part of the cultural continuity of our Africanity because we fear to look there for our origin. When in reality, that origin shows us that something Elijah Muhammad said: the black man has no birth record. What does that mean? It means when we originated, there was nobody there to give documentation to say, oh, this is where they started. But we can give documentation on where other people started. You see what I'm saying? So I was just looking at these things, man. And it just made me say, not only do I have to, and I hope that in these 10 years that I've been back, resurrected, that I have been able to give something of value to the people, something that you can take and give to the people coming up behind you, whether it's your sons and daughters, nieces and nephews, your little homie on the block, whoever. Because that's my goal. See, actually, it's my mission. I took it on. You know, I told you that was the deal I made. I'm of the belief that all of the good health that I've enjoyed since then, since that day, has been because I've been doing the work. It may sound ridiculous, may sound spooky. Maybe I convinced myself that, but nonetheless, that's my belief. And until someone says you've been relieved of your post or found somebody to replace you, I continue to do the work. The only thing that I ask from you all is two things. One, continue to support and spread the message, because the goal is still the same. The goal is still, and I think we're up to 667 subscribers, and I thank you all. The goal is to qualify for monetization or get deleted trying. Here's what's weird. Now, in the environment that we're in, because they look at the condition of our people, being that's what I'm looking for. Being pro-black and talking pro-black doesn't get you censored as much as other things. Like any discussion of C19 is going to get you censored. I read all the bylaws on YouTube, multiple times now. And it's just like, okay, I get it. You can't say nothing about it. Fine. You know what I'm saying? I've accepted that reality, Interestingly enough, and Pfizer's being sued. I'm gonna do a video on that though. Whether it stays up, I don't know, but I am gonna do a video on that because I found that interesting. They're being sued like in 3 different places, I think, over multiple things. So there appears to be a tipping point with a lot of things. But that I'll discuss that later. Hold on. Oh, yeah. I haven't read this. By the way, you can follow me on Instagram at dc.radical1. I need to take the Twitter down because they won't let me back on Twitter for whatever reason. So ignore that. You can follow me at OTWTube at DC Radical One. If you'd like to donate via Cash App, you can donate at $ DC Radical One. Of course, this is the YouTube, and you can email me at dc.radical_1 at protonmail.com. And there is a brother who sends me articles every week. The brother that sends me those articles via email, that keeps me abreast of different things that I may not have seen. I appreciate you so much. Because you be hipping me to stuff all the time. Because there's stuff that I don't understand, and you just be like, hey, yo, check this out. And I'll be like, okay. Brother Pro Black Plant Based says, I've been censored a couple of times recently for posting pro black comments. Pro black content. Interesting. I haven't. Most of the time I'm censored. It's C19 stuff, vax stuff. Some of y'all who I follow on Instagram, by the way, they got y'all marked because they like, you sure you want to tag this person? And I'm thinking to myself, you know who I am? You probably asked that. You asked other people that about me. What are you talking about? Of course. I know this person personally. These are my folks. Of course I want to tag them. I remember a brother told me one time, he said, you so shadow banned. This before, I'm not shadow banned anymore. I'm publicly banned. Like they tell me, hey, by the way, you got 90 more days for saying XYZ. When a brother told me, he's like, you're so shadow banned that when I share stuff that you share, it gets banned or no one sees it. And I just laughed. I'm like, that's crazy. I didn't know that was a thing. So the current battle that's going on right now, and this doesn't apply just to black people. The battle over the First Amendment, right? Think about that. The name of it, the First Amendment, freedom of speech. The battle over freedom of speech in America is the most important battle going on in America right now. Now, for black people, we have our constant battles. Economically, we're fighting for our life. Spiritually and psychologically, we're fighting for our life. Culturally, we're fighting for our life. Hell, some brother is being arrested and brutalized by the police right now. So physically, we're fighting for our life. So it's hard for us to see overarching things because we're always what? Fighting for our life. But one of the things that we have always exercised to the point where we show other people how to do it, even at the fear of death, and do it to the point, do it so well that to a degree it has to back people off because we bring international pressure, is the use of freedom of speech. We know Martin Luther King because of the word he gave, regardless of what we think about him. We cannot doubt his eloquence. We know Malcolm X because of the word he gave, because of his wit and wisdom, his ability to dissect things and put them in a way that everyone can easily understand. If you ever heard Fred Hampton, you know how captivating Fred Hampton was as a 21-year-old. What I realized after studying Fred Hampton and restudying Fred Hampton and restudying Fred Hampton is that Fred Hampton's ability to organize across racial lines is what made him the threat he was. I'm not an integrationist, y'all know. But what I realized, I said, because you have to, I'm thinking of all the Panthers. I mean, they tried to kill Huey. They locked up Huey and Bobby. And the other Panthers were killed, but they targeted Fred Hampton specifically. I was like, why? The reality of the situation is his ability to organize non-Black people and get them to see a Black perspective was dangerous to the establishment, especially at a time when who the establishment was changing. And that's the part that I never looked at before. We always look at it as there were some white people in charge, which there were. And those white people wanted to keep Black people in their place, which they did. But behind those white people in charge were some other people who don't consider themselves white, except when it's convenient, who were implementing their own plan. And a person like Fred Hampton, right, should he stumble upon that truth, which wouldn't be that hard, right, based on what he was teaching, would have been able to point out a common enemy, and that whole thing is neutralized and blown up before it even gets started. No one talks about how close Malcolm X was to identifying the hats. He would have already talked about them on a local level, but on an international level, nah. Because they weren't, in his lifetime, the moves hadn't been made to get them in a position that they're in now. But someone like Malcolm, who constantly studies, he would have figured it out quickly because he was traveling internationally and broadening his horizons and seeing different things politically, economically. It's hard to hide the truth from somebody like Malcolm. Brother Tony says that's what got Martin and Malcolm assassinated. I mean, the ability, I'm going to say this. I've talked about this before. The ability to organize people is the greatest threat to any group in power. The ability for people out of a person who's out of power to organize people who are out of power and take them off the current wavelength and path that they're on, which is to serve. This is all of us, right? Think about it. The vast majority of us are in a role to service the people in power, mostly based upon economics. You need food, clothing, and shelter. Those three resources are in the hand of a very few. It's just what it is in America. Right? You got the Federal Reserve. You got BlackRock. I mean, you got like these mega companies and institutions, Amazon, stuff like that. And they're all interconnected. So, and everything costs. You can't walk out. You can't stay in your house without paying somebody. You can't walk out your house without paying somebody. right? Stay in your house. You turn anything on, you gotta pay somebody. You gotta pay it. Electric man. It's wintertime, you gotta pay the gas man. Or if you don't got gas, you just paying the electric man for, your heat and your lights and all that. Your refrigerator. You gotta eat. Unless you're growing all your own food, you gotta pay somebody. Like we literally pay for everything except air. I have to pay for electricity and internet just to be able to come on and tell you how much we got to pay for everything, right? So we're intricately a part of this system, whether we like it or not. But the person who can organize, right? Like Morpheus in the Matrix, and say, you're plugged into the system. This is how it works. This is how we unplug you from the system. The person who can do that, or the person who says, hey, this is the system. These are the people in charge of it. There are only 1 million of them. There's 300 million of us. Let's go take care of them. That person's a threat. Because, again, because culture and traditions aren't being passed on, that's one of the ways that you limit those people coming about. Here's something we never talk about. Huey P. Newton, Bobby Seale, before they the spirit, mind, character, soul. Many of the Panther brothers, contrary to popular belief, they didn't come from single family households and all this stuff. They came from families. They had a mother and a father. Even though Malcolm X lost his father when he was young, the fact that his father and mother were Garveyites was passed on to him. The reason you try to destroy the family, because the family is the incubator, especially for Black people, it's the incubator where the root of learning to organize comes from, because the family is where you learn to love Black people that you don't like. I'm going to say it again. The family is where you learn to love Black people that you don't like. Those of y'all got siblings. If you got more than 2 siblings, it's one of them that y'all don't never get along. Maybe your little brother, your little sister, whatever. It's one of them y'all don't never get along. But you love them. Like if somebody from outside start something, they come home, they can run home and say, hey, so-and-so hit me. You going up there, you going to smack them. Right? Because y'all family. The principle applies in organizing Black people. You can't have a large organization and like everybody. It don't work that way. Everybody don't get along because everybody's personality is different. Everybody's experiences is different. Even though we may have the same ideology, we're seeing the ideology different. You ever heard a bunch of Christians sit around talk about the Bible? You see what I'm saying? We've got all types of ideas about the thing. Allegedly, everybody got the same book and everybody reads it. So when you're organizing, the ability to be organized comes from family. That's why the breaking down the family structure is so important for the people in charge, is because it makes it harder for people to organize. The way that Europeans view family is what makes it so difficult for them to be able to rebel against things that are happening that they don't like. If you notice, if you really paying attention, there's a lot of Europeans that didn't like these vaccine mandates and all that stuff when Biden dropped all that. They didn't like that stuff. A lot of this drag queen story out and all that, it's a lot of them don't like that stuff. The stuff that's going on in the schools with these wild books and all that, they don't like that stuff. So why is it so difficult for them to organize? Because they're not one, their existence is rooted in struggle. They fought a war, they fought a revolutionary war, they won the war. That was what, 2 centuries ago. Almost 2.5 centuries ago. Their existence isn't rooted in constant struggle. Our existence has been rooted in constant struggle until lately, where some of us think we won, or at least have made a truce. The truce that a lot of us have made is that I'll not be African if you leave me alone. Well, it don't work that way. But people, I mean, again, Jonathan, what's his name? Jonathan Majors. That's the truce he thought he made. If I don't be black, y'all leave me alone. Now he on trial for his life and his career. He could have just been black. Could have been like the brother, what's the brother that directed the Black Panther movie? Could have been like him. He just like, hey man, I'm black, my girl black. I went to Africa, found out how black I was, and came back, made the Black Panther. Hey, it is what it is. Yeah, I'm gonna argue with these people about the next movie. No, I didn't like what they did, but hey, still black. And I'm not fighting for my life because of what some white woman said. So he could have just stayed black. It's just easier. It's easier to stay black. You came here, black. You're going to leave here, black. Hundreds of years from now, they'll be able to take some of his skin cells, look at it under a microscope and say, oh yeah, this was the black dude. Even when you're dead, you're going to be black. You see what I'm saying? That's just how it works. It's easier to be you. What? Again, quote Brand Nubian again. I know I've done it before. Nobody can be you but you. But we don't want to do that. But our existence is rooted in struggle. And so this is when Chini showed me this was so crazy. When all this stuff started happening around the pandemic and everything, he said there was a European that was like, we got to do something. Where's our Martin Luther Kings and where our Malcolm X is at? Think about what I just said. A European male was so distraught about the stuff that he saw going on in America that he's asking where their Martin Luther Kings and Malcolm X's are. But their existence isn't rooted in the struggle. Their heroes were from 2 centuries ago. You know what I'm saying? George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, them people were extra dead. It hasn't been incumbent upon them to create freedom fighters. The desire for freedom births revolutionaries. You see what I'm saying? The woman and man's desire to be free births revolutionaries. Because the freedom comes through the womb of the woman. That's why corrupting the mind of the woman is so detrimental. It's hard to plant a seed in Sexy Red and produce Malcolm X. So if you can convert most of the young women to being Sexy Red, you never have to worry about Malcolm X being born. You never have to worry about Huey P. Newton being born. You never have to worry about Fred Hampton being born. You have to never have to worry about John Henry Clark being born. You don't have to worry about Amos Wilson being born. You don't have to worry about Fannie Lou Hamer being born. You don't have to worry about Dr. Francis Chris Wilson being born. You don't have to worry about Marimba Ani being born. Because the mind of that woman has been so polluted. It's hard for her to produce that type of mind that will yearn for freedom and can organize the people. You see how this works? You see why they attack us the way they attack us? The European, especially the hat, has calculated that the black man has been defeated. So now you can move on to the woman, and now her mind has been conquered. They can move on to our children. And so since they think that, that's fine. Those of us who are here and who will hear this message understand the words of Dr. Khaled that I repeat constantly. We must resist to exist. Part of resisting is producing the next generation of minds who will not accept the programming and will come up with solutions to thwart the plans of extinction, because that is the goal now. Slavery, suffering, and death, with an emphasis on the death part. Because how many times does Bill Gates have to tell us that there's too many people on the planet before we start looking around? We're like, all right, well, who you? Because you don't see him. It's not like he's killing off his family. So what people do you think is too much of? Because Africa has the youngest population of all the continents. They have the most young people. Their population is going to grow the most in the future. So if you're talking about something, there's too much of somebody, we know who you're talking about. So they're telling us as plain as can be told. They don't want us here anymore. They don't want us to exist. And it's up to us to do something about it. I mean, Joe Biden sat up there and told a bunch of black people on a Zoom that y'all need to get along with these Hispanics because they're going to replace y'all, or something to that effect. And now you got so many people flooding across the border. It's so many of them have flooded across the border from various places, various races of people, various ethnicities, that some of the Hispanics is going back because it said it's just too many of everything here and not enough money, and they were sold a dream and it ain't real, and they going back home. But some of the other people can't go back home because they came from Eastern Europe and Southern Africa and some island in Asia. How do we think those people get here? How does a dude come from the middle of Africa with no money and land in the United States, or land in Mexico or wherever, somewhere south of the United States, and walk into America by itself? How does that happen unless somebody wants it to happen? How does that Asian dude or that Eastern European dude, how do they get here? How do you cross the Pacific Ocean with no money? Right? Like, we see what's happening. And the bad part is our so-called leaders or elected officials are complicit in helping our destruction and the destruction of America. It's not just our destruction, the destruction of the whole country. But again, we must resist to exist. And we can't be afraid. We can't be afraid to point out our traitors who are masquerading as leaders. Because if the person, I mean, what's the point of a person being in position if they have no loyalty to us as a people? Who cares if you're the first black this and the first black that and the mayor of this city and the governor of that and so forth? Who cares? When you're helping to destroy our race. That's why one of the things that, and I learned this from Brother Jenny's teacher. One of the things why I teach EID, enemy identification. I consider myself, it's going to sound arrogant and ridiculous, one of the foremost experts in EID for black people. Because no one else does it. It's easy to be the foremost in something when there's only like 10 people. It's like 10 experts. It's easy. How many of our people really identify, look at our enemies, say, oh, this person's detrimental, this person's detrimental, this person's detrimental, even though they're black, this person's detrimental because it, this white person's detrimental, this small has detrimental, this, so forth and so on. How many other people do that? Y'all let me know. If it's a whole lot of people, I can stop doing what I'm doing. So, brothers and sisters, I told you all I would give you all 90 minutes. We're coming up on 90 minutes. Again, follow me on Instagram at DC.Radical1, OTW2, which is black owned, at DC Radical 1. And you can donate via Cash App, $ DC Radical 1. This is a YouTube, and you can email me at dc.radical_1 at protonmail.com. Believe me, any contributions you make will be greatly appreciated, and they will firstly go to the channel. Also, I forgot, as part of my StreamYard, if you want to do streaming, you're looking for a streaming software, you can use the link. The link should be in the description of this video for StreamYard, and you get a discount and I get a free month. That's a great deal for both of us. Is anybody out here want to take me up on that offer? The link will be in the description. So, brothers and sisters, that is what I had, I guess you could say, on my heart about, man, we have to reconnect ourselves with our ancestors, with our traditions, with our culture, and with our history, and stay locked into that. Because those lessons and really the community that we built, especially through Straight Black Pride and through this platform and things like that, are, unless I'm wrong, the times coming up, they're going to be greatly needed. And they're going to be necessary. And there's just not a lot of people that we're going to be able to relate to get beneficial information from. And if we're in need of certain things, to be able to get things from. So with that, brothers and sisters, I thank you all for listening. Despite my voice, I can only imagine what this sounds like. I'll listen to it later, probably tomorrow morning. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, excuse me. Share the message, share the channel with your friends and family, and be on the lookout. Hopefully I'll get confirmation tomorrow, and I can start working on a flyer, and I will post that on the Instagram and send it out in the email and post it here on the YouTube for the Dr. Chancellor Williams Day. His birthday is coming up on the 22nd of December. And more than likely, we're going to meet at the gravesite on his birthday. That's a Friday. And the lecture will be the 23rd. If things change, I'll let you all know. And hopefully y'all will be able to support that. It's the same $20 it's been, even though those $20 ain't 20 in like they were. The price will be the same. The lecture will be slightly different and upgraded. So with that, brothers and sisters, thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I am your brother DC Radical One. And with that, I say a BB for ODA and straight black pride.